My name is Andrew Desjardins. Hockey is my passion. This was me 2 years ago, as far as anyone can be from playing hockey. But now I'm back. This is my story. I was born with a health challenge called cystic fibrosis. I call it a challenge because it's something I was supposed to overcome. It wasn't something I was supposed to become. People don't understand that sometimes their challenges become who they are and they don't overcome them. Throughout my life, I've lived with cystic fibrosis, but it never stopped me. It never held me back. I started playing hockey when I was 7 years old, and it's become my passion ever since. I'm now 34 years old, and it's taken me a while to get where I am. A lot of challenges have come up, but now I'm doing well. Cystic fibrosis is a disease that ultimately affects your capacity to breathe. It's a genetic disease. You're born with it. It's not something you can pick up from someone else. And it's the #1 genetic killer of children in this world. The average people live to is about 33, 34 years old. I was 32 when I had my lung transplant. In fact, I got a liver too. I had a triple organ transplant.
So Andrew was born with cystic fibrosis and was diagnosed as a young child with cystic fibrosis, where his lungs continued to get damaged, progressively worse throughout his life. So in cystic fibrosis, there's problems with the lung handling salt and water, where the lungs get too dry, and the patients like Andrew get recurrent infections. And usually by the time that they reach their teenagers' years, they develop really end-stage lung disease, depending on the type of lung disease. And for Andrew, he really had infections over and over the last more than a decade prior to coming here to see us.
When I was 3 years old, one of the things people with cystic fibrosis are prone to is dehydration. And at one point, I got so dehydrated that my skin turned blue due to lack of oxygen and water, and the top of my head caved in, because when you're a child, the last bone to form in your skull is the occipital plate, and it hadn't formed, so I was in dire need of water. So my dad rushed me to the hospital. I got scars on my legs and my ankles and my neck because they did what are called cut downs, and they put needles in my neck, my legs, my ankles, and the top of my head, and they basically pumped me full of fluid. Back in the late 70s, that's how they did things in those cases, I guess. So before I had my transplant, one of the many times I got extremely sick, I went into the hospital and my blood oxygen levels went down really low. They had to put me on a ventilator, which is basically a machine that breathes for you. And they put me into a coma, a medically induced coma. They kept me under until my body could heal. And at one point, they said, there's nothing more we can do for him, to my parents and my friends. We don't think he's gonna make it. Right after that, someone came in and prayed for me, and I kind of turned around instantly. And I think that was just another faithful step in my process and my journey. It shows that, you know, I think God was there with me through all this. When I first went to the hospital, they told me unless I get a liver with my lungs, they wouldn't give me lungs. They said at one point, they don't do lung-liver transplants. They sent me home, and I prayed about it, and I asked for a liver so I could get new lungs as well.
Cystic fibrosis is a systemic disease, so people most often think of the lung disease, but cystic fibrosis affects all of your abdominal organs. It affects the gastrointestinal tract, it affects the liver, it affects the sinuses. And what we discovered during Andrew's lung transplant evaluation was that he had a lot more severe liver disease than was previously recognized. If he would have undergone a lung transplant alone, he probably would not have been able to have a good outcome. Usually the stress of transplant, the side effect of medications that these patients that have severe liver disease do a lot worse after transplant. So he was stuck with either a multi-organ transplant, 2 organs, both lung and liver, or probably not being offered transplant at all due to the severity of his liver disease.
Not too long after that, I went back and they said, okay, we'll get you your liver, we'll find some lungs. I waited, and every once in a while they'd call me and say, we found those lungs, we found the liver. But it wasn't the right lung and liver for me. It wasn't the right time. I feel like I was going through a process those 10 months. I feel like God was building me up. I don't think my faith ever caved in, but there was some times where I definitely may have had some heated conversations with God and said, hey, I think you have a greater purpose for me, but why aren't you giving it to me right now? Why aren't you delivering what you said you would bring to me? And I said that in good faith, knowing that he would, but I was just waiting. I know everything I want to happen in my time, but apparently a lot of it had to happen in God's time when he was ready for me and ready to see that I earned or deserved what he had for me. So, and I guess it's still happening every day. I know he still has more for me, he probably still has more for you, but it all comes in his time, not our time. It comes when we're ready for it. It's patience and it's faith. The process was quite interesting. 7 times in a row I thought they found organs for me, but they didn't. I'd show up to the hospital and they said, nope, not this time. Finally my day came and I was ready. The day after that, after my transplant, within 24 hours I walked a mile. I knew it was time for me to go back out into the world and fulfill my purpose. I knew my prayers had been met when I started walking around, and people would see me and say, you know, wow, I remember you on oxygen, and they didn't even recognize me. In fact, I remember going to drop off all my equipment that I carried with me for a couple years. I was on oxygen for 2 years. I said, I'm dropping this off for Andrew Desjardins, and they go, well, tell him I said hi. And I go, well, I'm Andrew. You can tell me you said hi. So I never imagined where I'd be, actually. I always prayed about it. In fact, I'm better off than I ever thought I could be right now. These days I'm playing in an adult hockey league and I'm coaching kids and adults. The youngest children I coach are age 6 and 7. I also coach adults who had that dream. They always wanted to play, but they never got to step on the ice and live that dream. And I love sharing that with them. I love helping them propel forward and living that dream. It's actually my way of giving back. I love sharing what I've learned with other kids. When I'm out on the ice, I push them the way I wish someone pushed me when I was a kid. And I show them the things I wish someone showed me when I was a kid and I was learning how to play. I see that today's young hockey player is someone who's got a lot to deal with, but I see that the sport takes them into another place where they're happy the way it did with me. So I love to share that with them and help them enjoy the sport more, anything I can do to give to them. It's just so rewarding. There's no any dollar value or anything I can really put on that. What I would say to someone is if they're waiting for a transplant or if they're waiting for something that they really believe in, is that just let your beliefs carry you, let your faith carry you, because honestly, you don't know what's gonna happen down the road, but in those moments while you're waiting, if you have strong faith and you have belief that you're gonna get there, that's the best thing you can do. It's gonna make you happier during those times, because it's tough. Just keep pushing. You gotta push yourself every day. It's a challenge and you gotta keep going and it'll come to you.